And I'm...
Hello, everybody. Right, we are live. So my name is Lawrence McCarhill. I am one of the founders of the Happy Startup School. So some of you watching may know me and may know what we do, but we're really a community of people and a school that are looking at life differently and business differently, measure success, not just in profits, but also in happiness. And so we're always interested in talking to founders, leaders, change makers who are challenging convention and also looking at, different ways of approaching the way we design our businesses and our lives. And today I'm really honored to have Ayse Birsel, who's, I believe talking to me from Seattle today or this morning, from where you are, in the afternoon where I am. And Ayse is an author, so she's going to talk a little bit about her book. And she's also going to, I'm sure, tell us a little bit about her process of Deconstruction, Reconstruction, I believe it's called. And Ayse is also the co-founder and creative director of an award-winning design and innovation studio. And so, again, I'm sure she'll tell us a little bit about that. So welcome today, Ayse.
Great, Lawrence. Thank you so much for having me.
And yes,
I am in Seattle.
And is it raining? I believe it rains a lot in Seattle.
Looks like it's going to rain.
Okay.
Yeah.
So luckily, the viewers haven't been put through this little moment we had before the call. We were trying to get Hangouts working, but this is all kind of the bit in front of the stage, and it all looks seamless, right?
We're very happy to have succeeded in connecting, right?
Exactly. Yes. The universe conspired eventually.
Yes.
Okay. So first off, when we do a bunch of events, we get people together, and one of the first questions we often ask people as a bit of an icebreaker is just tell us one thing or one experience that might have shaped you as a human being. And so I thought I'd throw that out to you this morning. And is there one thing that you can think of or point to that has led to where you are today?
Yes, I love that question. And the first thing that comes to my mind is one that I didn't expect, actually. Because I think there are many points in life that transform you and make you who you are. But the one that, when you ask me that comes to my mind is being 7 years old in Izmir, Turkey, on my way from home to school. I think I was in 3rd grade. And in those times you could, I must have been, 7 years old, you would let your kids walk to school in Izmir. Not anymore, but I didn't let my kids walk to school. So when they were that age. But anyway, on the way to school, there was this Alliance Française, which was the French school and cultural center. And I went there for some French classes. It was a beautiful spring day, and I don't know why, but I decided that I was going to check out their backyard, their garden. So I took a detour. I went to the back garden, and it was filled with flowers and herbs, and they were coming up to my waist. So imagine this little girl in this kind of wild garden with ladybugs flying around. And I ran around in just that moment of happiness. And to me, that's the moment where I realized that I'm a person, and that I can do things, and that I have autonomy, and that nobody knew I was there, but I had the freedom to do that. And that's the moment I often go back to when I want to go back to who I am. And so that's the moment. And then of course I went to school. Nobody knows this except you.
And would you say
my mom doesn't know this,
And so would you say you're trying to recreate that moment ever since, in terms of, it feels like a moment where you're very present?
Very present, and with a mind of my own, and where I didn't ask for permission. And I found myself in a beautiful moment. Wow.
So I'm curious to know, given the work you do, I think you said it well in the video that I saw, which was, you've had the experience designing products, and now you use that experience to design, your life, and obviously help other people do the same for them. Right. So I'm curious to know, has that always been that way? You talked about this. Is it, it sounds like a kind of utopian view of like childhood and your upbringing and doing the work you do now. Was there a period where you didn't have that and you experienced, maybe what work could be like if you didn't follow that path?
You know how one thing leads to another. I mean, I grew up in Turkey. I went to design school in Turkey, in Ankara. And then I came to New York to do my master's. I had a Fulbright scholarship. And I went to Pratt Institute, which was great. And then my chairperson, Bruce Hanna, gave me my first real project with Noel to design office accessories together. That product came out, that collection came out, and it's still on the market actually. And it's, it had both our names on it, Bruce Hanna and Ayse Birsel, and I thought I had it made, and, that I was just going to continue. And little did I realize that it wasn't going to be so easy. But, when you don't know, you can be very courageous. So, and I've had my studio ever since, and kind of couple times thought, when I was a kid growing up, I wanted to become a lawyer, and couple times thought I should have become a lawyer. Design is so hard. And, those first years after I finished the project with Bruce Hanna and I started my own studio, when I was reaching my 30s, there was one time that I thought, I should have become a lawyer. This is so hard. And then boom, Toto from Japan, wanted to work with me. So I went to Japan and lived and worked there designing toilets for a year. And so then I thought, design is great. I love doing this. And then, and I continued designing many products, from toilet seats to office systems to automobiles to pens and, you name it, kitchen appliances. Actually, I can show them to you if you want.
Yeah, why not? It'd be great to see.
Yeah, okay.
I haven't heard many people say that they want to become a lawyer as a way to get out of a tough working environment. It's kind of like, I think I've met a lot of lawyers who want to get out of that world, but not many who want to get into it.
Exactly. Well, luckily, every time I said that, something came along and pulled me back into being a designer. But can you see the toilet seat now?
Yes.
All right, so that's the toilet seat. It's unofficially coined as the world's most comfortable toilet seat. And that's partly because instead of being just a plastic shield for the toilet, it's really like a chair with a hole in it. And so then from toilets, I'll take you to office systems. This is the Resolve office system for Herman Miller. Then kitchen products for the Giada de Laurentiis brand for Target. What I love about these kitchen products are that they're incredibly affordable. Like the potato peeler is $7.99, but they're also beautifully designed and they're very ergonomic. Then some Phil's felt architectural products, some Moroso pieces with craftspeople in West Africa, and automobiles. This automobile project is actually very dear to me because this was our first project with Bibi, who's become my husband and partner since. Mm-hmm. He's the Seck in Birsel+Seck. Mm-hmm. This was our first project together. And when we met, and I did this project for Renault, the French automobile manufacturer. And when we met, he had designed 4 cars for them. And then we fell in love, and we had our best products, our kids, and and then he, became my partner.
Awesome. So it seems like, you can feel the sort of care and attention and love put into the work you do. I mean, is that, where do you think that's come from? Is that something you've always had from a young age, or do you have a family of designers, who have a similar? No,
I have a family of lawyers, hence that. Okay. I feel like, why don't I follow the family kind of line? But it's, no, you're right. I'm in love with design, and actually I think what I'm in love with is the human scale of design. And I learned this when, actually this was the catalyst that had me go to design school. I was actually thinking of becoming an architect, and a family friend came to tea and using a teacup said, have you heard industrial design? Look at this teacup, how it's designed. You know, it's how the edge is, you know, soft so that, you know, you can put it in your mouth, and then it has a handle so that you can hold it without burning yourself. And then it has a saucer so that if you spill your tea, you don't ruin your mom's beautiful tablecloth. And that was so human, and so human in scale. And at that moment, I fell in love with that. And I haven't lost that, this whole idea of doing something for people, for, you know, making their lives a little bit better, easier, you know, maybe more fun, more intuitive. And it's been kind of like the center of my work, really. So it's, and I think a lot of designers, I mean, design is, it's a tough job for multiple reasons. One, it's risky, because, you know, you're creating new things, you're creating the future based on what you know today. So, and that is risky. So it doesn't always pay off. So people know that, you know, there's sometimes that there will be failure. Two, it's hard to quantify, and in this business environment where everything needs to be measured, it's not always easy to quantify the benefit of design. So it's hard for businesses, our biggest partners, to trust designers. And to build that design. And so it's hard, but it's, I think we get so much pleasure out of that challenge that we continue. And sometimes I joke about, you know, we're punished because it's such a beautiful field, you know, when you don't always get the business results you want. It's
And to some people's eyes, you're just drawing pictures all day and getting paid to do it.
Exactly.
It's interesting that, I mean, we found, in terms of design, I mean, you've talked a lot about the empathy you need to design a great experience or a product that people are gonna, it's not just gonna look good, but also something that actually makes their lives a bit better or easier or faster, whatever it might be. So did you ever have that battle between, you know, the artist in you and the pragmatist, that this has got to work on a commercial or a kind of usable level?
Right. No, I'm actually very good at that. I didn't want to become an artist because I knew that I needed constraints. And so I really welcome the constraints of business. And this was something that, you know, they didn't teach in design school, that design is really all about business at the end of the day. It's a creative side of business, but you constantly work with business people, and your products need to sell, and they need to meet certain criteria. But I love that side of things. And often the constraints are where the ideas come from. You know, I'll give you an example. I just showed the Resolve office system, and when I first started designing that, the business side of Herman Miller, they told me, you know, we want you to design something that's 50% less expensive than anything we have on the market today. And I thought, great, because they've just asked me to innovate. Yeah. Because there's no way that I can make something 50% less by just incremental change. This has to be kind of a disruptive change. And sometimes, you know, hearing those things and understanding that the constraints could be used to your advantage are, you know, that's exciting.
Yeah. And so that, well, leads me nicely onto startups, because we're the Happy Startup School, and one of the, I suppose, areas that I'm passionate about and we're trying to push is for people to really get design at an early stage, and to like you said, there's a bit of education needed to explain to people that this isn't, it can be seen as a luxury for many people. So in terms of how you communicate an idea or get an idea to spread or even find customers, what's your take on that in terms of explaining to someone who's really at the early stage where they've got limited resource, how you could actually maybe use that in your favor rather than seeing it as a negative?
Right. So let me show you, if I may, another screen share, and to just talk about what it is about design that's different. So do you see that? Thinking like a designer? Okay.
This is a screen grab from the book, I guess, is it?
Exactly. Yeah. I talk about this in the book, and I talk about this with our clients and students, but designers think differently, and I think it's really advantageous for businesses to have a designer in the mix, because one, designers are optimists. So we're optimists because we think that no matter what the challenge, we're going to come up with a better solution. And you want that optimism when you're going forward. Two, as you mentioned, the empathy. We're empathic. We put ourselves in other people's shoes, and often these are the users. So we represent the user's voice. Holistic, we see the big picture. And I often use a simple technique to ask, what's the emotion, what's the physical, what's the intellect, and what's the spirit of what we're doing? And that gives you a holistic 360 viewpoint. It's collaborative, so we do work with disciplines of all kind, and we're kind of like the glue that brings people together. And we connect the dots, and then we ask these what-if questions, which is really about being open-minded. So I think that's, in a nutshell, the value of having design in your group,
Mm-hmm. And so would you say from that designers make great entrepreneurs? Because a lot of the traits that you talked about there are certainly the traits that you might look for in a successful entrepreneur, who's maybe willing to make mistakes when others think they're crazy.
I love that connection. Yes, I mean, it's, I guess in a way, that's exactly it. It's, and I find that as designers today, we're more and more becoming entrepreneurs ourselves, because things are changing so rapidly. When I started out, I thought that I was just going to excel in what I was doing and become a master in, products and kind of like this thing, and do a bottle, do eyeglasses, do a light, and do an office system. And then technology changed everything. The economic downturn changed everything. So we ourselves are becoming entrepreneurs. And I think if you look at what's going on with design studios, you'll see this. Nobody's a pure product designer anymore.
Yeah. I believe there's also a fund in the US called the Designers Fund, which only funds startups with designer founders on their founding team, which I think is really interesting. And in terms of, I'm keen to talk a bit more about how you've now sort of, pivoted a little bit, given that you've written this book, but you obviously still have the studio going. But at what point you thought, hang on, I've got this process. How can I take this and apply it to something, potentially even more meaningful than just products?
So it all happened kind of in an organic way. First of all, I was having a great time designing products for, some of the best companies in the US. And BB and I became partners, and we had kids, and we had a penthouse studio, and it was kind of like a fairy tale. And then the economic downturn in 2008 kind of was like a wake-up call, where a lot of our clients took the work in-house, and which made sense for them. They needed to kind of save money, and we were like a easy budget item on their on their budget sheets. So, but what happened is that not only that we didn't have projects and it was really depressing, but I also found myself with a lot of time in my hands, which I wasn't used to. I had been quite successful, and there was always like one project after another. And so when that stopped and there was this stillness, I didn't know what to do with all that time until Leah Kaplan, who's one of my oldest collaborators, she could see that I was really frustrated, and she said, look, Ayse, why don't you use this time, because you have time, to think about how you think, because you think differently. And that was like a lifeline, and that allowed me to come up with how I think, which is the process you mentioned, deconstruction, reconstruction. And so, I didn't know that one negative thing was going to lead to a very positive thing, which was really me going into my head, into my kind of creative world, and trying to define, what happens, how do you go from point A to point B? And so once I had deconstruction, reconstruction, that opened a whole world of possibilities, because we now had a process that we could go back to our clients with and say, here's a process, here's how we can help you think differently. So that's one side. That was one piece of the kind of formula or equation. The other piece of it was then applying to your life, which Design the Life You Love is very much about applying design process and tools, so deconstruction, reconstruction to your life. And that happened because I see my life as my biggest project. And so once I had a process, I thought, well, if my life is my biggest project, and here's a design process, kind of bringing the two together, can I apply a design process to my life? And it all started as an experiment. It's, I call it my moonlighting. And here we are 6 years later, and a book later, thousands of people have designed the life you love. And so that experiment really took off, and has now become kind of the core of how we work. So I talked a lot, but
no. So I think a lot of the best ideas are moonlighting ideas. Well, the Happy Startup School is started off as a side project 3 years ago, and we were running our design studio at the time. And this was our passion project, which wouldn't go away and kept nagging and gnawing, and is now the main thing. So it's funny how those things which we start as an experiment or a bit of fun often turn into something much bigger.
Yeah, and people draw you. You don't maybe quite realize it in the beginning. I don't know how it happened with the Happy Startup School, but I did with 12 people, and then 12 more people came, and then they told their friends, and with, before I knew it, there was kind of like a community of people who were interested in designing their life. And all these years, I had tried to explain to people what I do, which most people don't understand what industrial design or product design is. And like you said, they just think you're just sketching some ideas. But as soon as I started talking about, well, I also do this, I teach Design the Life You Love, people were like, really? When is the next one? I want to design my life. So there's this really interesting connection that when people get the concept of designing their life, and they want to be the designers of their life. So,
and do you think there's quite freeing for people to have? And people love a silver bullet, don't they? It's like, oh, if you go to a business and say, we've got this process, and it's gonna maybe not guarantee results, but it's gonna be something that you can hook onto, rather than just this kind of myth of what design might be. And likewise for people starting a business or trying to design their life, in terms of, it's not just this sea of ideas and inspiration, but actually a structured process that they can follow.
And I think that's what makes a huge difference is, I don't think you can tell people, go design your life. You really need to show them the structure, and kind of, here's how you can do it. And then take them along with you, and actually I wanted to show you the 4 steps, if I could.
Yeah, sure.
Share my screen again.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll just take you through the book a little bit. Here's the book. Do you see that?
Yep, got the cover.
All right. So, 10 Speed Press published it last October, and it's Design the Life You Love, a step-by-step guide to building a meaningful future. And it starts by saying, no prior creative experience necessary. So this is really important because this book was all about how can I make design process and tools accessible to everyone, not only designers, anyone who's interested in designing their life. And then when you open the book, the process is, so it has 4 steps. Deconstruction is where you start, and it's really about taking the whole apart and seeing what something is made up of, in this case, your life. And then point of view is then seeing the same parts differently, and developing a different point of view, which is the heart of creativity. And then reconstruction is putting it back together, knowing that you can't have everything. So this is really important because this is about choosing what you want to invest your time and energy in. Mm-hmm. And then from that, expressing that how those pieces go together by giving them form and making 1 + 1 equals something unique, a unique idea. So that's the premise of the book. In
I found it interesting. I think in the first part you talked about how when you sort of deconstruct your life and look at it from this objective point of view, you need to include the things that maybe the parts of your personality or things that you might do that you don't, feel most proud of maybe, but just to put it all out there. And then when you try and put it back together, I think you say that you'll never put it back together the same way. So it's almost like a warning, is that right, beforehand, that this is going to change you, and hopefully in a positive way.
Yes, exactly, Lawrence. That's my trick when I do the workshops. Like you said, deconstruction is a great way to talk about the positive and the negative, and the past and the present and the future, and the things that you have and the things that you aspire to have. It's just like for lack of a better expression, it's a mind dump, and it's all accepting. But once you do it, what it does is actually it breaks the preconceptions, the links that we assume are between things. That literally breaks as you deconstruct something. So I show this picture of a deconstructed, let me try if I can find that for you, hold on. A camera. You see this?
Yeah.
I ask people, look at this camera. This is, I think, a Nikon that's been deconstructed. It goes from being this compact black box to like hundreds of pieces. And I ask you, can you put this back together? Could you?
No. Didn't know if that's a rhetorical question, but definitely not.
Yeah. And most people say, no, we can't put it back together. And I say, exactly, that's like what deconstruction does. You can't, when you take something apart, you can't quite put it back the way it was before. And so if you have the perfect life, don't deconstruct it. And that's my cue for telling people, when they come to a workshop or a master class, if you want to walk out, because
it's going to get comfortable.
Once you do this, you're going to see your life differently. But most people who want to design their lives, they come because they're at a certain point in their lives and they want to think differently about it. And design, you can't do design if you're not solving a problem. So you do need that need of like, I want to do things differently. And luckily, we all have that in our lives at one point or another, for different reasons, right?
Yeah.
And for some people, it's sorry.
No, I was just going to say, so it's trying to get people to open up and be honest and maybe vulnerable about what they're going through at that time, if they've, it's hit a period of transition or whatever it might be for them.
Right, but again, I think what makes a huge difference in some people have told me that people who've come to design the life you love, it's worth kind of 10 hours with your therapist or even couples therapist. And I think the thing that makes such a huge difference is the qualities of design, the optimism, the creativity, the open-mindedness of asking what if. At the end of the day, it's just a piece of paper and pen, a sketchbook and pen that you're using. So there's this sense that you can try on different ideas and it's not going to bite you. You can fail and then turn the page and think about it again. And then it's the mood of design is also playful, because you need to be like kids. You need to be like that 7-year-old girl that I was describing that was like, let me go, try this, let me go into that garden. Kids try things and they learn by doing. And that really is the key to design, and it's really key to designing your life. Otherwise, it just becomes too heavy, and you need to rise above that and think about your life creatively and realize that you can do that you have the autonomy and the faculty to think about your life differently.
And I think a big part of that must be your, the way you come across, the way you must host those sessions, plus I suppose the language and the tone of voice and the design of the book itself, in that it makes people feel comfortable and safe, I guess, in that, what must be a few people a scary environment of putting their heart on the table, literally almost in some cases, if they're drawing it out or sharing their sort of washing their dirty linen in public, as we say. Right.
It's but I really want to come back and say that it's again, it's, to me, it all lies in the design process and tools. Because another thing that happens is that we were talking about this yesterday, in that design doesn't ask you direct questions. It inspires you and it helps you go on a ride of possibilities. And then it asks you to reconstruct and make choices. And that creativity is essential. So when I show that process of deconstruction, reconstruction, if you went from deconstruction directly to reconstruction, I think it would be very limited, because your brain in the middle needs to do a detour of seeing things differently. And so in the book, one of the tools that I use is about heroes. I ask people who their heroes are, and that these people can be people or people of, and that they have some quality, something that is of interest to you, that you admire and maybe that you want to aspire to. And that is the inspiration point. It's kind of like when you're designing something, you might go to a museum, or you might look at what's around you differently. And in designing your life, that's kind of the inspiration piece. When you think about your heroes, what you're actually doing is you're thinking about your values. And so, but if I were to ask you, Lawrence, what are your values? That's such a hard question. I'm sure you would come up with a few, but and then, and it would be kind of the traditional values. But then if you ask people what your heroes are, and then tell them the qualities of your heroes also are telling you something about your values, because that's the role of inspiration, then it takes you to a very different place. And I think that is what makes the whole thing different and not intimidating at all.
Yeah, I found that really powerful, that element, because like you said, if you just ask someone the values, they find it very hard. And and most people can think of their sort of heroes or people that they look up to. I think it's a lot easier, isn't it? And would you say that some of that is what they aspire to be, or that it's in them, it's just maybe not fully realized?
In my mind, it's kind of the same thing, that what you recognize in other people as things that you aspire to are things that you believe in, and that sometimes you have them, sometimes you already have them, sometimes you need to work on them, but it's kind of like a North Star, you know. It's and knowing those things make a huge difference, because I believe that if you don't know what those things are, you don't know how to make choices. And often I've found that in my life, I get most confused when times are challenging. You know, it's easy to represent my values and to say, okay, I'm going to share, I'm going to be honest, I'm going to be kind when things are going well. But then when things are hard or challenging, you kick into a survival mode. Yeah. And it's you need to remind yourself, or be reminded of, hold on one second, but this is still who I am. And so therefore I might not make the obvious choices, but I need to make the right choices, or the ones that I believe in. Yeah. I just want to say that this gets even more powerful, complicated and powerful when we work with large organizational teams. So you were mentioning that Design the Life You Love is a piece of our work, right? Mm-hmm. We also do Design the Work You Love, where we work with like large organizations and teams and help them design the work they love. And there the dynamics are even more complicated, and that's when I really have seen how design can be a powerful tool to bring people together, to help them see things and kind of build on each other's ideas without feeling threatened or without having a breakdown of trust. So it's,
I mean, we found this at the events we run. We try to get people who don't consider themselves to be creative to, just start sketching or mapping out their vision or whatever it might be, something just to get back to being that 7-year-old, like you said, and even having a Lego workshop or anything that makes them just break down those barriers and let their guard down. It's amazing, with a bit of permission and a supportive group of people, how suddenly they're back in that mode without much push. Have you found that too?
Absolutely, and it's funny. We do need to do a workshop together, as we've talked before, but there's a lot of overlap in the tools that we use. And I start all my sessions with a drawing exercise where I ask people to draw each other. And that's, for some people, that's the hardest exercise. Mm-hmm. But it breaks the ice and it kind of gets them to realize we're being creative. It's just, suddenly the room fills up with laughter, and before they know it, they're drawing. And that's the other thing that I found, is that we all learn at least two languages when we're kids, beyond the spoken language. We learn how to write. Well, then we also learn how to do math, but we also learn how to draw. So a couple languages. And then all of those go forward into the adult life, right? We continue to speak, we continue to write, we continue to do some math, and very few people continue to draw. Mm-hmm. And it's a huge loss, because drawing and visualizing is an incredibly powerful part of how we think. And together, it's just one more tool in our toolbox. So, like you, I try to get people to reconnect with, like, we all know how to draw. It doesn't matter if it's stick figure, who cares? But you need to be able to draw, to visualize your ideas. And whether these ideas are about your life, about your work, or they're about a user experience, or your vision as an entrepreneur, you need to be able to just stop worrying about your drawing skills, but draw it. You know, draw some arrows, draw some bubbles, and you know.
Yeah, and like you said, just let your inhibitions go a bit, and yeah, not be judged, because yeah, like you said, when you're a kid, you don't think, you just do, right? And just get on with it.
Exactly.
And so in terms of like, we were talking before the call, you were saying, well, I was keen to know a bit about what have you learned from this process, from Design the Life You Love, anything that you surprised you about people, the people you work with?
Yes, two things actually. One is that how creative ordinary people are. They're extraordinarily creative. And when I say ordinary people, it's people who are not designers, that people who are not necessarily have had the training of design, that they're nevertheless extraordinarily creative. And I see this again and again. People come into the workshop and they're shy, or they're like, but I don't know how to design, and they come out the other end with this incredibly kind of thoughtful, original vision for themselves. So that's the biggest thing I learned. Is that ordinary people are extraordinarily creative, and that you can, if you can visualize your life, you can change your life. And that I've learned because, you know, I run into people on the street or at my kids' school, or I get emails, and people say, Ayse, your process transformed my life, and here's what I did, you know, and, you know, I quit my job and I started my company, or like I went back to school, or like my favorite is I went home and taught the process to my wife, and now we design our lives together every Sunday. And when you hear those things, and that gives you the passion and the drive to continue.
Yeah.
Because I feel like as a product designer, my whole goal was to, you know, somehow positively impact people's lives. But it was always through products, right? You had to have something physical. And now with this process, it gives me at least one option where I'm able to share something about the design process that positively impacts people's lives, and they are the designers. You know, I'm not the designer; they're the designers. So
it's very empowering for people to have that. And I suppose it must be nice for you to have something that can work when you're not there, and have that. Well, feel like you're making a real impact on people without physically, you know, sitting with them, or you know, I suppose it is a product in a different way, right? But it's that they're helping to create that.
Exactly, and the book is also very much part of that, you know, to be able to share it at a level where, you know, I might not be there in the room with you, or you might not be in New York to come to one of the workshops or go to a conference where I'm speaking, but here's the book. And I really tried hard. The book took 3 years because I tried to get that feeling of like, you can do this, this is not difficult. And here's my voice, and I'm going to try and walk you through every step of the way. And then here's some examples from people who've done the workshop, so you can see how it's been done before. And then you just do it.
Well, it's a lovely book, I must admit. It just feels nice. It's got the cover. You know, I brought it into the office the other day, and everyone just picked it up and wanted to hold it. And it's, I think you described it more as a playbook than an actual book, right? It's very, the idea is it's going to be interactive and lots of space for you to sketch, make mistakes, and actually, do the messy stuff of designing your life.
Exactly. And if you mess this one up, turn the page, clean page.
There's always another life.
There's always another life. It's all redesigned. You know, make yourself a cup of tea or coffee, and just or wine. You know.
Yeah.
Put some music on and have a go at it.
Talking of 7-year-olds and play, my boys are in the background, as you can probably hear.
I love it.
Getting a bit too excited. You know, when you try and tell kids to be quiet, that's what you get. Is you know, it kind of bites you on the backside. So yeah, so it serves me right.
Both happy and, you know, the life you're designing. I love it. My kids are at camp, so I wish they were here to kind of distract everybody from.
Yeah. Well, I was about to ask how you balance all the stuff you're doing and maintain sanity and have a family too. So this is me trying to do it. You know, work for me isn't as divided as some people. I'm sure you're the same. It's that kind of overlap. So yeah, quickly, any sort of silver nuggets from your process that you've used for yourself to kind of balance all the stuff you love doing, because I'm sure it must be difficult.
Two tricks that I have. One is waking up really early in the morning, which I'm not a morning person, but I've learned to be, while everybody is sleeping, to do an hour of creative thinking. If I do that and I get that out of my system, I feel the rest of the day I'm much saner. I find that today there's no time to do it. So you have to carve a little time. You know, some people do it very late in the evening, but I get sleepy, so I try and do it very early in the morning. Mm-hmm. That's one. And the other thing is, you know, like you, there's this constant challenge of like, is my family first or is my work first? Mm-hmm. And they're both first, which of course is not possible. So what I find is during the week, my work comes first. Of course, my kids are there, but you know, they're at school or whatever. And then during the weekend, they come first. And so I don't work on weekends unless they're off to school, because I find it's very hard to, if you work on weekends, to get your mind out of work and into fully, you know, 100% into your family. So I've made that kind of division. Mm-hmm. And that's also helped me. It's not super rigid, but I know there needs to be pockets of time where my kids come first. And sorry about the email or this and that. It's
yeah, exactly. So it's good, like you said, it's adding those constraints to your life too, not just letting everything blur into one, which, you know, can be difficult to manage, right? If you're always on with technology as we are right now. So I'm conscious of time. Different
style, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Everybody is doing it differently, which I think is really the interesting part.
Yeah, I think what we're trying to do is, bring our kids to as many things that we do as possible to, you know, introduce them to different ways of working and thinking about, you know, living their life and eventually what work is and what work is when they're, well, my kids grow up, might be very different to what work is now. So finally, before we depart, I'm just keen to know any tips for anyone trying to find more meaningful work, because a lot of people in our community are at that period of transition, like you talked about, where they're trying to explore what's ahead for them. They're maybe not happy with their status quo or their current situation. So other than, you know, buying the book and going through that process, is there anything that you would say to them to, as their first step to edge towards that?
One, I find friends incredibly helpful. To work with friends and become friends with people you work with and include them in the conversation and kind of talk things out loud and kind of build a network of people with whom you can collaborate and kind of be open to their suggestions, even though at the end of the day you go with your gut feeling. And then the other thing that helps me a lot is to try and see things as an experiment. Mm. It's not do it, be it, you know, you don't know when you start something, and so why don't you experiment?
Yeah.
And that kind of helps a little bit to make you more courageous and then realize, well, you know, if it doesn't work, I'll try something else.
Yeah. That's great. I think that's partly why our community grew organically, was just this, a need to be around like-minded people who are trying to do something different and maybe get out of their current situation. Often their existing friends or family might not be from that world and might not want them to step out of their comfort zone and try something different. So I think it's always good to be around people who think the same way that you do, like you said, and can inspire you, but also challenge you too, which is important, I think. Awesome. And yeah, again, the idea of experimenting, I think, is great. There's a guy who spoke at our summer camp who actually hosts the event. We talked about this event, but yeah, he says just start something, whether it's a cake sale at the local market. You know, don't worry about starting a business. Start doing something, and then through that process, you'll learn about yourself and you'll learn about what might work. And the same thing applies to what you're talking about, I suppose. It's to kind of think big, start small, right?
Right, and part of that is saying yes, right? Yes, I'll try that.
Yeah, rather than finding excuses why you can't do it.
Yeah, and sometimes for me, I found that saying yes is a humbling experience. It's easier to say no. No, I won't do that. I can't do that. So I try to say yes more often.
So we'll be seeing you at summer camp next year then?
I would love that.
We tried to get it to happen this year, but it didn't work with dates, I think. But yeah, whether it's that, we're actually we're in talks to bring our altitude event to the US at some point later this year. So maybe we'll get to hook up there. But yeah, I'll let you know when that's confirmed. And finally, Ayse, if people want to connect with you and find out more about your work, where do they go?
So they can go to aysebirsel.com when it's related to design the life you love, and then Birsel+Seck.com when it's about more the design work. So if I write it here, will it go to everyone?
I think it might do. Not for those on YouTube, but for those who are watching the Hangout.
All right. So it's aysebirsel.com.
Okay.
So that's one. And then the other is Birsel+Seck.com.
Mm-hmm.
That's the business one.
Awesome. And are you on Twitter?
Oh yes, Ayse Birsel. Yes, Ayse Birsel+Seck.
Okay, great. Well, I'm sure between one of those they'll be able to get it. And yeah, like I said, I can't recommend the book highly enough. Yeah, some really useful stuff in there, and it feels fun, which I think is for a subject as big as your life isn't an easy thing to achieve. So well done. 3 years of hard work, I'm sure.
Lawrence, I wanted to ask you, how did you get the book in England? Can you get it through Amazon or?
I'm pretty sure it was through Amazon, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, as far as I know, it was pretty seamless to get here, but yeah.
I would love to have eventually somebody who publishes it in England, and it doesn't require any translation, so.
Yeah. And the reason we heard about you was through our friend Sinem, who actually was one of the people as part of the crew for our first summer camp 3 years ago, and she's from Turkish descent too, and so she spoke very highly of the workshops you run. So yeah, felt like we had a kindred spirit across the pond, so we had to connect.
She did good. Sinem,
yeah, exactly. So thanks again for your time, and yeah, well, look forward to seeing where this heads, and hopefully we'll get to hang out at some point with you soon and see what comes of it.
This was just the beginning. I thank you so much.
No worries. Okay, guys. Thanks for listening. Take care.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.